I make a lot of mistakes, and today I'm going to tell you about 8 biggest mistakes I made in 2022. Let's start with number 1. Mistake number 1, I was comparing myself to my dad. The reality is that we're all wanting to know if we're there, we figured it out, if we're doing well. And the easiest way to do that is to compare yourself to someone else. But the problem is you don't see how well they're actually doing. 1, before God, they might think they're doing good and they're not. And 2, they might be failing in areas of their personal life. They might look good from a distance, but they might not from up close. And the reality as well is, let's say they are doing good. Maybe they're a healthy person inside. With me comparing myself to my dad, I mean, he's been doing life a lot longer than me. I have to let go of what he thinks about me, how I look to him or look to other people. I've got to let God tell me how I'm doing. The second one is a little bit painful. I didn't take ownership over miscommunication. I was having some difficulty around like due dates and figuring things out with my job, and I felt kind of like people, they didn't care. There wasn't a clear value placed on communication, and instead of me taking ownership of that miscommunication or lack of communication and like reaching out, I kind of let it sit, and I didn't take that problem and face it head on. It led to like a frustrating, unnecessary situation. I learned some stuff from it, so that was helpful. But if there's someone that's not reaching out to you, or there's some issue that you need information on, take ownership of the lack of communication or miscommunication and go talk to them. That's what I learned. Number 3, I judge my ministry incorrectly. What we do in ministry is we just like follow the Lord. Like the reason we're in ministry full time is because the Lord told us to. We went to Norway because God told us to. We're in Kansas City. We do media work because God told us to. And honestly, after 5 years of doing this, I was kind of like, are we really doing something of value? Is it really working? Are we actually helping anybody? Or is it making enough of a difference? And the problem was that I was looking back on our ministry and judging it from the perspective, not of faith, which is what we got into this ministry with, but from the perspective of like, how does this look from the outside? And that's not really fair. I was kind of judging what God was telling us to do because it didn't seem fruitful enough in the moment. And when I realized this, I realized looking back in faith that God has done so much. Number 4, I didn't understand my problems really clearly. Jordan Peterson talks about this, that if we don't understand our problems super well in great detail, then we're gonna have a hard time overcoming them. And I realized most of the problems in my life, I wasn't really clear on them. I wasn't really understanding what the real issue was. I've struggled a lot with parenting this year, and it's just even in the last week that I've taken the time to get clarity on why. What is the real actual problem underneath all of it? Is it a problem of the kids just aren't listening, or is there a deeper problem that's in me where I'm not communicating clearly, or I'm not being consistent, or I'm not holding them accountable for what I tell them, or I change what I'm working with every day? If I'm not clear what the problem is inside myself, then I'm having a really hard time even understanding, let alone implementing a solution. Number 5, I was reactive instead of intentional. Most of us live our lives reacting to the people around us, reacting to our own desires. If we feel hungry, we go get something to eat. If we're frustrated, we lash out or we bottle it up. The reality is that we don't need to react to ourselves or to people around us. Instead, we should actually be responding to God, responding to His truth. And if we're reactive all the time, then it means that we're not intentional. I wasn't intentional with my schedule. I wasn't intentional with my words. And this leads to a lot of problems. I've got to stop reacting to people around me and start understanding what's true and what's right and what God's speaking, and learning to make plans and decisions and processes that I stick with regardless of how I'm feeling. That was under a minute. All right, guys, we're gonna sit quietly. Number 6 mistake I made this year was not trusting the process, not being patient. I've been struggling with work, with different issues in my life, and God's been directing me and showing me where to go with those things, but it doesn't happen overnight. And one of the things I did this year was take a course, getting better at YouTube, video, and I wanted to like immediately implement everything from the course. But it takes time to like learn stuff and figure stuff out. I kind of stressed myself out trying to make things happen too fast this year. You gotta trust God, trust He's leading the process.
Hello, everyone.
What are we making tonight?
Gingerbread!
Ooh, gingerbread!
It's gingerbread.
It's gingerbread. Gingerbread.
That's icing.
Icing.
Icing for gingerbread.
It's gingerbread houses.
Mommy's not making gingerbread over there. What's she making?
Pizza.
Sourdough.
Not pizza.
Mom, what is pizza? Pizza.
Mistake number 7 is I didn't obey the Lord. I delayed in obeying the Lord when it was clear. There's lots of examples of this, but one of them is from earlier this year when God told me not to be on my phone around my kids, around my family. And I kind of just sort of was like, that's hard, or I'm wondering how I should do that, or basically just delayed. I didn't realize it at the time, but I delayed in obeying the Lord. And now I'm taking it seriously, and it's a blessing. Number 8, final one. I realized that I wasn't trusting God. And this probably could go in lots of categories, but the one that I'm thinking of right now is I wasn't trusting God when it came to money. And this may seem kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever, what does that mean? What I mean is I wasn't actually thinking about money as something that God was going to provide for. I was thinking, how am I going to provide for it? How am I going to make sure it happens, it works? And while this is constantly a struggle, it really is kind of the direction of my whole year, and the shift and even the invitation of this channel is it's really set up around this question. Do I trust myself, how I can work things out, how it makes sense to me, or do I trust God? That's really the difference between a life built on humanism, the idea that we as humans, or me as myself, I can figure this out, and the idea of revelation, the idea of theism, that God is speaking to us, that God has relationship with us, and that He actually intends to be a crucial part of our lives, a crucial part of how we live and work and do things. If that topic's interesting to you, my whole channel's on that, subscribe, but check out this video on how to uninstall humanism from your thinking. It's sort of our background way of thinking, and I go into more of why that is and how we can get rid of it in this video. Thank you for watching.